the most essential thing of all. Our business needs to be good. The marrying of those two things is surely the essence of getting everything right on the planet. If we can marry those two things, if we can be more considerate, if our profit is more than just how much we shove in our pocket, that is everything. I see our sustainability champions, genuinely. I see them in 3 or 4 years' time at UN World Conferences as youth leaders, little kids coming from poverty-stricken families in Zanzibar, being the most articulate on sustainability. And that would be so powerful. And it's going to happen. They are unbelievable already. So in 3 years' time, we will parade them to the UN.
Hello, and welcome to the Travel Growth Podcast. I'm Tom McLaughlin, founder of North9, and this is where I speak to successful travel business leaders and dig into the successes, challenges, and learnings from their experiences over the years. So you, the listener, can take away actionable advice to improve your own businesses and maybe even lives too. My guest today is David Guthrie. He's a pioneer of the East African safari industry who spent over 3 decades proving that rugged adventure and radical sustainability are not just compatible, they are essential. He's the co-founder of A Tent with a View and the mastermind behind the Bush Rover Suites, feat of engineering that has quite literally put luxury hotel rooms on wheels. David is building an ecosystem in Tanzania with impact at its core, from opening up the untouched reaches of Saadani National Park to integrating the UN Sustainable Development Goals into the very fabric of his business. He spent his career moving the needle on what it means to be a conservation-led operator, and he's a man who's balanced the grit of the bush with the precision of a self-confessed statistics geek. This is a wide-ranging chat with David, who I've known for a long time now. And we go from the engineering challenges of mobile luxury and the business risk of pioneering unknown regions to how travel brands can drive genuine community empowerment and why the secret south might be the future of Tanzanian tourism. We also go into depth on how David plans to give the youth of Tanzania the opportunity to grow into the sustainability leaders of the future, something that is already happening with the fabulous projects he's putting in place with the Tent with a View team, and which everyone should go and have a look at because it's pretty extraordinary what he's building there. This is a super inspiring discussion. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think anyone in travel would benefit from paying attention to David and what Tent with a View are doing, as there's no one quite like him out there, and there's ideas spilling at every turn. So with all that aside, let's get into it. Please welcome the visionary David Guthrie. David, hello, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tom. Lovely to be here.
Thanks for coming on. We've known each other for a fair while now, and I've always had lots of very interesting conversations with you, and I've always found them, I found a lot of inspiration in them as well from, when all the stuff that you're doing with Tent with a View, things that we've talked about in Yorkshire when we've met up. So yeah, it's nice to get somewhere where it's recorded and shared with other people, because I'm sure they will take a lot from it. So I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
No, it's a pleasure, Tom. No, we've had some great chats over the time.
Let us start. I always start with a bit of background so people kind of know more about you and I guess kind of the journey up to starting Tent with a View. So maybe you could give us the 5-minute-ish background of what led you to doing that, whether it's out of education, whether, start wherever you want that you think makes sense.
Well, I suppose, travel really, isn't it? What leads you into travel? I don't think I was particularly adventurous as a child. I think my dad always jokes about how I was always asking him if he knew where he was going at the end of the street when I was young. But I had a friend who was adventurous, and we, 4 of us, in fact, at 15, got our bikes and decided we were going to go to the Orkneys. So we went off at 15 years old with our bikes and took the train through Glasgow with thinking of these sort of one-headed monsters that would be in the Gorbals at the time. I don't know why the Gorbals sounded so scary, but it did. And we got to the Orkneys, and it was just this magic experience. We just took our tents on the beach near Stromness, and then with about 30 quid each to last the 4 weeks, and people just looked after us. We just went all over the Orkneys and had this brilliant time. So I reckon that was a significant moment. And then really, after that, I was always always going up to Lake District, and then in sixth form hitching up to Scotland and with mates, and increasingly getting into wildlife. So I think it sort of led me into liking wilder places, liking open spaces, liking wildlife. And then the second really big one was university. I went to Kenya at the end of the second year with some friends, and equally clueless. We hired a car somewhere in Mombasa, drove into Tsavo National Park with an idea. We'd booked to stay in some huts in the middle of the Tsavo, and found the huts okay, which was great, and then realised they were just huts with nothing to eat, and we hadn't brought any provisions because we were idiots. And so we drove to one of the lodges, and the lodges were incredibly well subsidised. So even hopeless little students that we were actually able to sit and have a meal and a drink, and we just got carried away, sat by the pool of this place, and then suddenly realised it was about 10:30 at night, and you not even realising you're not supposed to drive after dark, but off we went back to our room in our hut. Of course, couldn't find it for ages. Met lions in the road. Just had this wow thing experience, and that, I think, at the end of that, that was it. I was hooked. I think I spent most of my last year at uni just sort of writing stories and imagining life in the bush. So I think that was probably the key point when I got into it.
What took you from that to Tanzania?
Well, when I was there, some guy said to us, we were sort of waxing lyrical about the safari part of it, and somebody said, "Oh, you should go over the border. Tanzania is great. It's much greener. It's really remote. Nobody goes to Tanzania. It's much more edgy." So that was that, and then so that became the thing. I thought I need to go there, and so I went through the old Lonely Planet and found operators in Dar es Salaam that were in Selous Game Reserve, as it was then, and there was a guy who was obviously a local Tanzanian guy who had a little write up in there, and I contacted him back in the days of writing letters, airmail things, and he came back saying, "Yeah, you come and see us," and I said, I could maybe teach you a bit of stuff for marketing and whatever else, and help lift your business a bit, and you could teach me to be a guide and so on. And so I came in, I went in, I landed back in Mombasa thinking I knew my way around, being cocky, going back into Mombasa, and immediately got scammed by someone who claimed to be police, and they called me a South African spy and took half my money off me on the first day. So, inauspicious beginnings, but then I could have fled, but I sort of hunkered down and got across the border into Tanzania, and I got I landed in Tanga, and I got a night bus from Tanga to Dar es Salaam. That's in the north of the country. It's a serious bus journey, especially in those days. And the guy said, "We haven't got any lights, but it's okay. It's a full moon tonight." So we drove for about 6 hours with no lights through the night on the bus. But that's the start of real Tanzania. So that was, and it all kicked off.
What was that company? Who was that guy then? Who was the guy that you'd reached out to? That was like a tour operator on the ground there that you were going to work for?
I mean, there's 18 volumes of books with him. I mean, if I go on to that, I met Masoodi on the second day I was there. I went to see his office, met Masoodi, who's been my bosom buddy ever since, and it's we do 10th of views our business. And he was just a young thing, I was 26, 7, and he was 25. Cassidy was this guy, John Bullet Cassidy, was letting him run the business. I mean, John Bullet Cassidy in himself was amazing. His father had been called Bullet Cassidy because his mother was accidentally shot when she was out in the fields, heavily pregnant. I don't know who was shooting what at the time, but somebody was shooting at wildlife and shot her, and the bullet went into her, missed the baby. She survived, the baby survived, so they christened him Bullet. And this guy he inherited Bullet as John Bullet Cassidy. Crazy, bonkers guy who spent more than half the money we earned as a business on witchcraft, right? Honestly, we had juju things hanging everywhere. There are so many stories. I haven't got time to go into them all, but
yeah, we'll save that for another podcast.
but basically, that was the grounding. Me and Masoodi sort of were kids under this guy who was about 50 odd at the time. and he, so I lived at his house in Dar es Salaam with his lovely wife and his children, but kind of dealt with this bonkers bloke. Every time he came with a big new business plan, he went, no, I had a dream last night and I was watching from out of my body and I saw and this is what we're going to do. So that's how it went in Impala Tours, which was great at the beginning, but then it got a bit too much. So
yeah. And at what point did you decide, hey, we can do this ourselves? Let's go and set up a company.
In 94, this is from 91. In 94, we had 2 American guys came. Dreaming of their own African business. And one was a very sort of classic Californian American who was the CEO of an aerospace company, and he had this. He would quote himself the quintessential East African romantic. And then there was the guy Tom, who was a real kind of mad scientist guy who actually was American Texican, but was living in Germany and had done since his 20s. And they came out together and they went on this sort of mad trip of doing anything and everything with Masoodi and myself. We even killed a giraffe on there. We flew in with an airstrip with them and hit a giraffe that ran out of the bushes and sent the plane spinning into the bushes. That's the kind of Wild West it was at the time, but they loved it. But they thought it was great in the end. And so when it got too much with Cassidy, I wrote to them and said, look, guys, do you fancy investing in me and Masoodi? And they immediately got on a plane to the UK. And we actually started Temp with the View on Valentine's Day, 1995, in somewhere where it was Huntington.
Yeah.
So, because that's where they were doing the aerospace stuff down there at Cambridge. So that was, so that's how Temp with the View began.
So you've just had a big anniversary then?
Last year was it was a biggie, yeah.
30 years. Bring us up to speed now. Tell what does the company look like now?
Well,
what you're doing. Give us a sort of overview of how it looks currently.
Well, from that, the way it grew up, I suppose, was then one of the quintessential East African romantic quickly ran away from the sort of hideous business building in Dar es Salaam as it would be. It was everything, all his worst nightmares. The other guy was much more solid, stayed with us. But basically, we built a camp. We found that the unloved reserve of Saadani Game Reserve, and built a camp there as, getting a foothold somewhere where no one else had been. And we were offering tours to the most remote parts of Tanzania. To get a foothold, we basically, the first trips we ever did were the wildest trips we've ever done, even till now. The place we've gone to still nobody goes to. It was this crazy trip where, an old 109 Land Rover had a center of gravity about 19 feet in the air with everything you can imagine shoved in. There were 4 clients, a cook, and Masoodi driving this one particular trip, and it went everywhere into parks that to this day you can't really access. It was just driving across through forests and working out which way to go. We had a boat we'd bought in Sheffield. I'd bought in Sheffield and put in a container that was an inflatable, and it was leaking as they crossed Lake Malawi, and the clients were having to pump it on one side while Masoodi piloted it at the back. There were all kinds of things, but but it got us some early clients as we worked our way in. Was
that just a cost thing? You had to go somewhere away from it because it was more accessible from a cost point of view, or was there some?
No, it would cost a fortune. It destroyed everything. It was just, we tried to do something that no one else would do, thinking, if you want to do something completely different. And of course, we were picking up odd clients. It was a very, very Heath Robinson sort of 2 young guys trying desperately to make something happen on a shoestring. We literally had some end-of-line tents and blacks on the beach at Saadani. It was great. It was probably the proudest moment. When we built our first ugly toilet with a big concrete surround, we were sort of bowing to it. It was each thing as, we really were just starting by ourselves from zero. And obviously got better and better. So
it's a bit sort of its time now where, over-tourism is such a big thing, and being in the places that are the, off the beaten path kind of places are the ones, that's kind of what everyone's talking about. Where can I do that? It's harder and harder to do that. And
It
yeah,
is.
you were obviously doing it 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, of course, it was an amount of self-indulgence, of course, because we were doing what we would love to do. We were going to just exploring the place as we went. But I think that's a really important part of what we do. And one of the toughest gigs, isn't it? One of the toughest things to do is grow in a way, try not to step over the mark, or, try to keep things at a level whereby it doesn't become ugly commercial. Of course it's commercial, that's what we do, but it's ugly commercial where you just let it go rampant. So, and that's not easy. Bringing a community with you for community tourism, whereby you maintain some authenticity to what you do, and and you don't ruin the culture. It's a tricky one, isn't it? What do you do with the Maasai? Do you criticize the Maasai when they all start making bangles to sell to the tourists? And so, well, they want an easier way of life themselves, but at the same time, you don't want to erode their culture, which is kind of crucial to what they are and why people want to see them in the first place. So they're really tricky things to navigate. So we find ourselves often on the edge of things, developing new areas, doing new things. And it's always a really tricky balance. I always find that you come out with an idea, we need to help the people here, and then you reach a point where you think, we've got to be very careful how we do this. And we can't be condescending either and say, oh, that's spoiling your culture. They might say, well, stuff the culture. I want the money, thanks. So it's never easy. I think it's one of the hardest balances. And we talk about it a lot, don't we, about tourism supporting communities, but it's supporting the communities in the right way is a really tricky balance. It really is. I find that the hardest thing. There's an obvious thing to give people a leg up, but do you want to erode them into being just homogenous human beings like everyone else? And even that's not an obvious answer. Maybe they want to be like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, telling people to not evolve and change because we want to fly in for a week and go up at you is, not the most compelling of sort of messages for something like that.
I mean, in a way, I think, what I think we found, as life moves on, is you evolve yourself through inevitably. Well, everybody is similar in a way. In your 30s, you're all kind of go guessing, and you're going to win everything, and you're going to change the world. And then as you mature, isn't it? It's about family. You look at your own family, you start to have kids, whatever, and family, and you realize, those basic human instincts are much more important. Sort of, love, relationships, and community become essential. And so you change your perspectives, don't you? And so as you move into that, it becomes more and more important how you engage with the people around you, and that changes the way you run your business as well. So I think that's yeah.
Sorry to interrupt there.
Yep.
How do you find that balance in terms of what you offer? Like you say, you've got the you've got Saadani and places like that, lesser known places, but then you've got the clamour for the Serengeti, and obviously everyone wanting to come see the migration and things. How do you balance those two things in a sustainable, for want of a better word, way?
Well, I think that it's in the north, of course. When you see in the north of Serengeti, when you see what happens sometimes now with the crossings, and it's sort of a kind of unabated bun fight around the crossings, and there just isn't enough control, enough interest in doing it ethically, and at the park level, it just isn't there. That's just the honest truth. It's also, I think the operators have to try to do the best they can with it. And in some ways, it's sort of one of the ways, stepping back from it. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to be at the crossings. When the wildebeest cross the Mara River, it's obviously a huge attraction, but, I feel that we need to step aside. So if it gets too bad, we step away from it, and we promote that, and we move to other parts of the park where we know there's good wildlife, but again, it's going to be much quieter. And it's amazing, even in the Serengeti, how many places you can go with great wildlife where you won't see people, even the huge parks. But it's marrying it. So, for instance, we've got this thing, we've got the Serengeti wetlands. We've kind of christened the Serengeti wetlands, what was on the edge of the park, on the shores of Lake Victoria, that's now in the park. But what we're doing is like we've put a big effort of elevating that, and we've created these waterways, and so you can go with canoes and you can go out, and so you're on the lake on the boat, or you can go on these canoes on through these waterways, which is getting ever more interesting and a bit scary. There's a lot of big elephants around now, which didn't used to be around because of the protection, but it's brilliant. So you've got this very interesting position now. We've got a tower up there where you're looking at across Lake Victoria while you're looking at elephants, and you can go out on the canoes connecting back to the solid land. And I think that's got a huge future. That Serengeti wetland is going to have a huge future. It's got amazing bird life, including the shoebill, the kind of holy grail over there, and more and more wildlife moving into the lakeshore around this thing where you're going to traverse by boat, which is so nice as opposed to always driving. So there's things. So developing a new area and a new concept, that's really interesting. That's a big thing we're doing. So we're focusing on looking at other things we can do. And just
When you
near
say
that,
we, who's we?
Oh, 10th of view. I mean, just meant us.
So that's you developing the wetlands. That's
basically. So because we moved in, and it was village land, but we knew Serengeti wanted it. They were moving to get it. Basically, there's a western corridor of Serengeti, and you have the famous Grumeti River in the north of the northern boundary, if you like, and the Mbalangeti, less famous but equally important, Mbalangeti River in the south. Those two rivers really define the western corridor of Serengeti. It's a long finger that moves in the west of the Serengeti, which is brilliant for wildlife, and it's basically between those two rivers. And there's a main road going to Kenya that's just 3 kilometers from this lake shore, and everything to the left of that as you go north, so everything on to the west of that was outside. It was like about 11 kilometers by 3 block that was outside the park. And the wildlife come right up to the road and just occasionally would cross the road. But now Serengeti have always wanted that. But it's suddenly this fascinating thing because a big section of that is actually flooded. It's floating vegetation. So you're going through all these beautiful papyrus grasses and stuff. And we found an island. We built a tower on this island and then made 7 kilometers of waterways around the tower from the lakeshore back to the main camp on the dry land. And of course, so that now the wildlife's all moving in. It's now in transition. So the Serengeti are now, they're in there. The people have now been moved from that area. It's now in the process to be part of Serengeti, but there's so much more wildlife moving in.
So that sounds brilliant for one, but that reminds me of a lot of ideas, and you are always full of ideas and kind of innovating in what's happening. Obviously, you had the Bush Rover that has been a big success and has got you loads of coverage and visibility. I know there's loads of other things that you have done. Where does that come from? Is that you having harebrained schemes on your own, or is that like a group of you putting your heads together and just thinking like, how could we make this better all the time? Tell us a bit more, because I think this does really stand you apart from a lot of other people and businesses out there.
I think the key is, I mean, the first part I would say is it comes from you're living your dream, aren't you? We do what we're passionate about. I mean, a lot of people can argue that in travel, but I would say, particularly for someone in my position, it's kind of, it's my big thing since teens, my life. And so the drive to explore it, to expand it, find other ways to do it is there because if I'm not doing it for business, I'm, 1 out of 2 trips we might do as a family will be going on safari or some equivalent. We go to Mo. We love going to Mo. It's not quite the same, but it's eagles and otters, and it's basically whatever else. It's still kind of in the middle as we go and we watch wildlife and we climb hills and we watch wildlife. So it's and so it's really important. So what you're doing is, of course, you're always thinking about it, isn't it? Whatever you're passionate about, if you're lucky enough to have your passion as your job, isn't it? I mean, it's a brilliant scenario because you indulge it so much more. So, so what's happening is I'm always thinking about what's a better way to do this? What else could we do? Because it's almost obsessive about it. So I think that's the driving force. Things happen along the way, like the Bush Rovers came about because apartheid finished, all the South Africans came up with their bakkies, and some guys came to one of our camps, Sable Mountain Lodge, and they didn't want to pay to stay in the lodge. They wanted to lift put their tent on the top of their car and sleep there. They were a bit bullying to the guys that were there, and I turned up late at night from the train and got a bit shirty and said, "Oh, get out of my camp! Don't tell my guys that." We had a bit of and it got me a bit, okay, we can do this let's do this in a mad way. And it was so right. So, and Masoudi's, none of this happens without Masoudi, because he is the brilliant engineer. So whatever harebrained scheme will come up with, he makes it real. So I said, right, Mas, we need a bath in the back and a toilet in the front seat. That's the winning part. Then make it work from there, right? And we just kind of evolved it. But so there are catalysts like that. But in the end, you're thinking, everybody loves a Land Rover. Can you imagine having a really kind of luxurious mobile camp? And it's, of course, incredibly tricky, and took us about 3 years to work out how to do it. But in the end, it was really worth it. So in those instances, you're looking so little low, we found the island and all the flooded vegetation around it. And thought, cracky, this is on the edge of the Serengeti. Look at the bird life. It's amazing. Even now, imagine when this is Serengeti, with the wildlife and the bird life, and an island, and you can put a tower on here, and you can look everywhere, and you can put a waterway to get back to the main camp. But when you're on the island, you're isolated. The only way in and out is by canoe or boat. And it just comes from that, doesn't it? And then you're in the situation, and but it comes because you're dreaming of doing it, doesn't it? It's because it's your passion.
Yeah.
And that's the point. You see things. I mean, Saadani, right now we've got at Saadani, there's a beautiful area with a secondary camp we call Bab's Camp, which is a tower, but it's a village area surrounded by the park. And literally the park is north, west, and south, and even over the ocean, because there's a marine park just slightly north of it. So it's almost entirely closed by the park. And it's the most incredible little ecosystem. This incredible environment where turtles lay their eggs on the beach. Hundreds of elephants will walk in and out of the thing called Elephant Island. It's almost an island. It's a tiny slit of land connecting it, but it's about a 3 square kilometre piece of land that elephants gathered 200 at a time there. And in the same little islands around the salt flats, lions will go and den. The pride of lions that live there go and den. So all these things are right next to each other on the ocean front. It's incredible. But there's a salt works. There's a little community in salt works. You're thinking, how can it not be park? This is the best bit of the park. This could be one of the best pieces of park on the planet.
Yeah.
And that passion again is inside you, isn't it? So what you see is you think so what we decided was at night, everything comes out, because we're a bit afraid in the day, because there's the motorbikes and people going through in the day. So we've started doing safaris at night. I've just practiced it in end of January with the great new thermal imaging scopes that are now available. And we did 4 nights in the tower we've got there, and 31 separate groups of elephants we saw through the thermal scopes, and then just drove out a little bit. We never left the immediate plot. You might drive 300 meters and sit there, and the elephants would surround the car in the moonlight. It's just unreal, and we were able to monitor the lion pride that's there. We saw them every night. They're full of buffalo. 2 times, right, in 35 years, 3 times I've seen elephants actually lie down to sleep. It's a big, big deal to see that.
Yeah,
Twice that night, different herds of elephants, 2 or 3 of the matriarchs lay down within 30 meters of the tower. They actually feel safety around it, and you're finding all this stuff out. So suddenly, the drive was to find out what the wildlife are doing, and now the drive is to make a documentary about them and expose the realities of the government to stop this crazy saltwork thing that's going on, because it's incredible. So that comes out of your passion for what you do again, doesn't it? So that's what drives it.
Yeah. So I think whilst I agree, I think there's something different about, well, I don't know, maybe it's just the level of passion. Like you say, most people who are working in travel have a passion for travel in some shape or form, but it just feels like there's I don't know, it's like having a different lens or an open mind, or the positive attitude and optimism to push through, to kind of see what it could look like and push through, because it's not, these things that you're talking about are no easy task, right? The Bush Rover thing, like you said, years in the making. building waterways doesn't sound like it's going to happen overnight. So tell us about because this is obviously something you can't do on your own. You've got to have a group of people behind you who are all doing it together and working together. So what is the team like? What's the operation like? If you say tent with a view, how many people are working in it? What are they doing? Who are they? You mentioned Masoodi, yeah.
Well, he's the essence for all the initiatives. The essence is, it's with him. If Masoodi wasn't in there, it would never happen. But and he is equal to, when he gets a bit between his teeth. I mean, it's hilarious. I do these little sort of like a spider ran across the page drawings, and he somehow interprets them and makes these things happen. So that side of it that's the essential combination, and he is an incredible human being, like just an amazing guy. Left school at 11 because of the situation in Tanzania, but incredibly clever without ever being educated, and so everything he does brilliantly when he works it out for himself. There's a fantastic team grown under that, and it's a big family thing as well. I mean, there's a huge number of the Kalanga's Massa's family that are in it. His daughter's now the head accountant and so on, because we're obviously in our elderly stage in terms of the business. But there's loads of long-term people, and it's very, very solid. So there's everywhere you go, you've got incredibly solid teams running the camps who have just been with us for a long time, most of them, and it's so there's a real connectivity between everyone. I think that maybe the proudest thing in there is that, and like you said, as you get older, that becomes the most important thing. So I look forward to going to each place to see the people, because the guys it is just a big family. It's like, they are. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. It really does feel like that. I mean, I genuinely feel like that. I feel like I've been dad to about 4 guys getting married, because their dad dies young. So, these are the things that happen. And you're just going to grow this really strong team. And it feels that's the point. There's such a solidity. I mean, many people would be afraid to live. I'm more in the UK. I'm only there for 5 months a year these days. Because Lily's at school over here, my daughter. But there's not a sniff of a thought that, if they're away, what might go on. It's an incredibly solid team. It's just, the trustworthiness between us is fantastic.
How have you built that? I guess especially as a foreigner going in, sort of the immersion into life there and the community and building that trust, and like you say, that thing growing and clearly operating incredibly well. Have you got any tips, advice on how you've
obviously
maintained that?
It comes out of respect, doesn't it? I think that, look, sometimes there's always a bit of luck somewhere, isn't there? And what happened to me was, when I first went out to work for the crazy juju guy, Cassidy, I lived in the camp, in Impala camp, and there was only one guy in the camp who actually spoke English. So I was forced to speak Swahili very early, which is great, because otherwise people, that are in cities, it's very hard. The Brits are always English speakers, struggle to speak other languages because everybody usually speaks English, doesn't it? So we're always the last one to have a second language. But but I was put in a situation where I had to, and of course that helps you then, doesn't it, to connect? But as the years goes on, it ultimately it's about choosing to be around people and respect people. And it's tough. We have this thing about new managers. There's a 3-month barrier. Always at 3 months, everyone has a big wobble. They come in and it's, this is my dream. I'm going to be in the bush and da-da-da-da. At somewhere about sort of 10 weeks, 12 weeks, they're desperately missing home. And it gets harder, by the way, because there's so much connection these days, because they're video calling every day, aren't they? So mum just says, you come home, love, if it's getting you down, gone. So there's more chance of that now, where you have to be more resilient, and so it's tougher now. You had no less choice going back a bit. But once people get past that, then they start to find themselves connected. Because at the beginning, they'd sort of feel, juxtaposed to everything around them as well. The guys don't speak to me. Well, they're thinking you don't want to speak to them because they feel you're being a bit on the fringes, and they're not quite sure that you're looking down, they're not worthy, sort of thing. They're thinking that. And the more you understand the language and the people, you realize, how insecure people are, because they just have little self-belief there. So they're thinking, you won't want to speak to me. You're the big umzungu. You're the whitey that's come to, And so, and you get this sort of crazy situation, but you break that down, then suddenly everybody, whoever makes the 3 months then stays for ages. It's kind of like you've got to, and that's such a clear thing. I used to warn everyone when they came, you're going to have the 3-month wobble. We'll see if you can get through it. Right. And, but of course, so after that, you're just building, you're getting closer and closer, aren't you? It means more and more to you. What's happening around you means more and more. And the instinctive evolution that we all have. I mean, you've had yourself, Tom. I think, when you sort of that you reach that point where you go, you know what? Wouldn't it be great if we take our profits and help people? It's an instinctive thing. Eventually, it's something that in all of us to an extent, and I think you feel great when you actually are able to do something with it, to make that bold move. I've no doubt that you feel brilliant. That was the best move you've ever made in terms of your business. Likewise, going to, we're now making this massive girls' sports academy on the lake shore near to the Little Loch of Ango. It's just proudest thing by miles we've ever done. It's because you see what's building around it, and it's not changing a few girls' lives. We're being really ambitious here. I mean, we're not just talking about, we're giving some girls a leg up because they live in poverty. We want these girls to be mega stars. We want Tanzania to smash the living daylights out of South Africa and England in the World Cup netball. We're not mucking about. And so it's really driven because what hits me after all the years is there's so few icons. So you get closer and closer and you realize everybody's desperate for success, but they don't believe in them themselves at all. People just don't believe in themselves because, taking that example, there has never been a female professional athlete of any sport in Tanzania. Been independent for 65 years. They've never had a professional female sports person. Can you get that? Wow. It's ridiculous. So imagine if we got the first one through our netball academy, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
That it's, and so the drive on that, that these are really, really important things.
Yeah. So that you sort of preempted my segue from that team spirit and all of how to motivate people and get them connected and working together and stuff. When you have a kind of mission that you're on, rather than just your standard business of let's go and make some money and sell some trips and host a few tourists, it's so different, isn't it? So maybe tell us zoom out from the academy to the bigger picture of like what is that for you? Like what's the big view of why what's the purpose of Tent with a View and what are you trying to do with it? Because I think the academy's sort of come quite far down the line from lots of other amazing stuff that you've done.
Well, I'm trying to think what way you would. I'm brutally honest. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I would suggest we are really poor at marketing in general. We are certainly below average in terms of how we've marketed ourselves over the years. I'm brutally honest. Over the 30 years, I can't say we've ever come up with some genius marketing strategy along the way. We just, and probably not been busy enough, in terms of it, because we might be a little self-indulgent on the ground and not enough of the hard stuff. But I think that it's interesting that those things you do, that the more you commit to community and conservation and helping people, it spins out. That actually works. Almost inadvertently, it works, and it struck me to sort of, I've given a couple of lectures on how this has happened in recent years and just thought we ought to make it more of a strategy. We ought to be, it doesn't need to feel like I'm a philanthropist or I'm a big, hard, nasty businessman. And lots of people kind of struggle with that concept. I'll never forget, when we did some presentations, remember the big thing in Ilkley we did with that time? Well, we then did one in Sedbergh, and there was a lady came who was a mother of a friend, and she says, I don't like mixing this, your good works with your business. Well, why? That's the most essential thing of all. Our business needs to be good works. The marrying of those two things is surely the essence of getting everything right on the planet. If we can marry those two things, if we can be more considerate, if if our profit is more than just how much we shove in our pocket, that is everything. And the really sad thing, if you like, in terms of it not being understood across the wider world, is in our industry. If you ask me, if we questionnaire all our clients over the years for all the dancing leopards and sort of, lions, whatever, doing the triple salto in a tree, the fact is that when people get a meaningful community moment, if they bump into something like, a spontaneous football match, it's a family and they've got their kids and they jump on the pitch and suddenly all the kids from the village are playing and 200 people start watching and they have a little game, that is that remains them for the rest of their life, never mind the best bit of the holiday. And you realize that people crave that connection, those connections. And you think, so if you're smart, making those genuine community connections is probably your best strategy, your best thing you can offer your clients. And if you can market that you do that properly with authenticity, that's probably the best marketing. So, and okay, some people might be on that, but I think most people don't get that. It tends to be a bit corporate-y. Yeah.
Yeah, the separation, I think, is like a really key oversight. It's kind of like, if you can meld that into what you do and what the offering is and the thing that appeals to the audience, and like everyone wins, and you don't have this situation of, at the end you've got to go and sort of put your hands out and ask for a donation or something. It's like, no, like this should be baked into the whole thing where everyone in the process is benefiting from it. And like you say, I think travel is better placed than any, that if you do that well, like generally the people who are coming and doing the thing, visiting the people, engaged in the experience, like that's the thing they want to get out of it. So if commercially you create something sustainable and viable using that, then you're onto a winner. I don't see anything else how it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, because I've talked about, we have this thing of calling the SDG centers, the Sustainable Development Goal centers, and you can see our industry now, everybody, whether it's B Corps or the various other things, which is incredibly important things, but that we're all trying to achieve, because we need to, because we need to be energy efficient and collaborative in what we do, but but it feels a lot. I was thinking the idea of sort of the wider SDGs is those things always still feel like a chore. I have to do it. I need to do it. But my goodness, it's a chore. Here's a list of things you must do, and everybody's right now. We've got to stop that and do that. And we know we have to. It's for the better. But it's feel like I'm being pulled into this thing, and it's an exam. I'm in the school exam. I've got to get a B, otherwise I fail. Right. There is this opportunity, and so it's super important. That's absolutely vitally important we do that. But at the same time, across all the other sustainable development goals, there's this opportunity for us to do things that are a little bit more self-indulgent, a little bit, emotional, where we're all connected to communities when we do these things. We've all got things. I mean, even people from, as the UK or the European operators, they're close enough to their DMCs and the operations on the ground to have projects. And then, I mean, you from your thing, you got the projects that you've grown, you've got parts around the world, haven't you, where you're doing things, and you're connecting to those. So it feels like that, that connection is a really important part.
Tell me about the Sustainable Development Goals more. If a travel company, a DMC, or whoever is listening, how have you embedded them into what you're doing so that it isn't that chore and it's just there working?
Those projects allow you to do something that you feel, something you know your community, and you know what their needs might be, and so you could do something that you feel the connection, and you get a massive emotional reward from, and of course potentially give that reward to your clients as well, because you've then got these meaningful relationships. So what we try to do as a base thing is we have our little SDG centers that somehow are in every camp facility somewhere, not in everybody's face, but to the side. And what we've tried to do is we make sure that all the uniforms the guys wear now all carry SDG messages. So all uniforms now everybody has their own message, and they can hopefully articulate their message. So it might say, there's one, for instance, that says, equal rights for men, ... and nothing more, right? And it's got a picture of a sort of African lady on the back with those words underneath, and it says SDG number 5 underneath, gender equality. Of course, what we try to do there is give it to the big hairy bloke who fixes the boat rather than the cute girl in the thing, so that, the message has extra oomph. So you've got everything from, let's be the first generation to end poverty, an old line like that, but it's very important, SDG number 1. So the guys have those messages. And of course, you're looking for clients to sort of read them and sort of think, what's all that about? And eventually engage with somebody, and they'll say, oh, well, it's all about this, and then go to read about the SDGs in the place, sort of the SDG center that's somewhere tucked away. And then in there, of course, that's when we explain the different projects, each camp having its own project. So that's bringing it to life. And if people then want to help, fantastic, or buy a T-shirt, fantastic. But if they just go away a little more enlightened, fantastic also. So it's kind of just this slow idea of getting everybody to feel a little bit more that way about looking at ways you can help. And some people, what tends to happen is probably, if I'm brutally honest, 3/4 completely ignore it.
Yeah.
But the other quarter engage with it, and maybe 1 in 10 gets really into it. And that's a great win.
And that'll build momentum over time, right? That'll come. I guess the interesting thing about it is probably there's lots of companies who are doing lots of these things when you go and look at the SDGs, but maybe they don't realize it, or they're not talking in that language or something like that. And it's almost like bringing some uniformity to the messaging so everyone can get on board with it and understand it. Because I've seen you talking about this, and there's a great video that we'll share when we share the podcast separately that shows you and how that's working with the sports academy. And you're talking in a room, and the SDGs are there written on the wall behind you, and you're kind of pointing out which ones are relevant to that product, to that project. So I guess it's just more of that if people are going to more of these places and going like, oh, here's how the SDGs are working. It's incredible that it's a UN initiative, and it's sort of not anywhere to be seen in any of this stuff where people are pushing them forward.
I mean, that isn't, of course, it's a slight disappointment that there isn't more hasn't been more oomph from the UN about getting it out there. But, our industry is such an obvious catalyst to promote it, isn't it? Because, like I say, the funkiest holidays you get are usually in some of the wilder places, and in most of the wilder places, there's a lot of people in poverty. So it's often, the people that suffer the most are often right next to the people who are the most affluent. And so if you've got somebody having a really good holiday, a good time, in somewhere, obviously like a wildlife park with the communities on the edge of them, it should be the perfect environment to spread that message as well, shouldn't it? To make it clear to them. And like you said before, I think huge numbers of companies already have their own projects, and wouldn't it be? And I can't help but feel that if we had a homogeneous vehicle through which to promote it all, and what better than the UN, who are the closest thing we have to a world government, so that it becomes clearer. Because for all the great things we try to do with it, with the B Corps and so on, is they don't mean a lot to other people because they don't understand them. Even as ourselves, we struggle to understand one from the next. Even in the industry, what does that one do as opposed to that one? If you've got a UN accolade or a UN movement and you are accepted into that, you're doing enough to be part of that UN movement. That should build enormous momentum, shouldn't it? That we would hope.
Yeah.
And I think so tourism, in terms of the United Nations and tourism, is such a great catalyst to try and have the kind of, I don't know, the anti-politics of the moment.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a nice thing? I think from other conversations we've had, you've talked about trying to work with NGOs or get into the UN and talk to people there. Have you got any particular advice for people who are trying to do those kind of things from your experience, or ideas on how how else you might be able to do that, I guess, for people to take away?
Well, if I'm honest, we've struggled so far to gather. I think what you find is, and I've found this projects across most ways. When we were doing conservation projects in years ago, I don't dare say intellectual ego sometimes are a bit of a dangerous thing, and as much as other things. And so what I would say is, I really hope, I still really hope we can find some real momentum. What we're trying to do now is get so much momentum in the projects. We've got our kids on Zanzibar, the sustainability champions. They are now doing their own fantastic newspaper. They're on their first edition. It will be out in a month or so. These are, they're 12, 13 now, I think they're kids. And they're doing these brilliant articles. We're all with meaningful things. They're actually they're starting the Zanzibar Children's Forest. So we're gathering up all the schools in Zanzibar are going to be given half an acre, and the secondary's a whole acre, the primary's half an acre. And our guys are teaching the people how to start growing endemic trees. So we're going to have and each school will go and plant in their area. I mean, how cool will this be? Imagine every school will have its own bit of forest, and will grow into a forest over years where they can go, their own space. But the kids are driving this. So our sustainable, these 13-year-olds are driving this thing. So they're out in the authorities asking for stuff, and they're doing, that's just one of them. There's several brilliant things they're doing, but they're, so it's got, that momentum is a key part.
Tell us more about some of those projects, because I think maybe the most useful thing for people is just hearing more of the things that you've got going on. So you talked about the Sports Academy a bit earlier. You're talking about the sustainability champions there. You've done lots of stuff over the years with things like the bear colliery in Slovakia, elephant poaching project. There's all sorts of things. Maybe you could build out a few more of these, just like headlines, so people can hear stuff that you've done that's baked into the business, if you like, and the impact that you have.
Yeah, I think people are, I think we all get instinctively involved in the different things around us, and obviously wildlife was our big thing at the beginnings. Well, still is, of course. But we found ourselves in wildlife projects, and we had a crisis for elephants, of course, in the 2009, 10, 11, 12. There was huge poaching, a real problem. So we kind of led a drive to stop that. But it's, but in communities as well, we had, again, the opportunity. You'd look at terrible health facilities. And so we had a Doctors on Safari where bringing doctors in to stay in. We thought, again, this is a nice concept that all fits within that idea of the wider UN thing, where you look at the different sustainable development goals and where you can help. But the idea where we offer our facilities, we make available rooms, for people that are coming to good works. I think one of the things that holds people back from doing good works is the fact that they've got to go and live in a remote village. So if you're a doctor or a senior lecturer or something, and you can in business, and you want to go in and help a community, one of the stumbling blocks is usually probably maybe somebody at the back end of their career, and think, can I, after my elevated existence as a senior surgeon, do I fancy 6 months or 3 months even in a mud hut with a kerosene lantern and no one to talk to, and that obviously is a stumbling block for a lot of these things. And so tourism industry offering facilities where you've got a very comfortable place to go back to, and you can interact with lots of people, around you, you can speak your language, it means you've got all the energy in the world to go through the day and do your thing. And that as a concept, I think, is a great idea as an industry. And I think that could grow. It could be, professionals on safari or whatever on tour in a wider sense. And I think because we had a brilliant thing with dentists. There's a great thing that was running Bridge to Aid, and these people, a lot of UK dentists came out in teams with the dental nurses, and they would go to remote communities. And you're talking communities where you can literally have 150 miles and no single dentist. So people are just suffering like crazy with toothache, and some people try and pull one out and die of sepsis. I mean, there's a lot of nasty stuff going on that you don't think about around teeth. I think, although think these days doctors are reading out, oral hygiene is kind of right up there in keeping you going. But so there's massive issues, and these guys would come in and they were brilliant, and they come in, and so they stay with us for 2 or 3 weeks, and each group would then they start off, they go into the community and say free dental care, so there'll be a queue about 8 miles long, and they start off doing it with local, let's say junior. Basically, there were nurses in effect, the people who had basic medical training and who volunteered, and so they would start by watching the dentist do it, and they would help, and then by the sort of middle of the second week, they would starting to do the extractions themselves and the basic dental work. By the end of the 2 weeks, they were actually doing all the work, and the dentist was sitting back, and then they would come back after 6 months and check on them. These are great projects that really help communities, and very easy to do. And I think so. These were things we did in the past that we've moved our model on, but I think that things like that, offering your facility for people to come in and help the communities around you in whatever sense, I think is a great way forward. That's another huge, obvious model that can be followed.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. So we've moved specifically to ours now, our specific goals based around what we want. But I think there are a lot of things people can take from some of those things that have happened in the past. But that was our evolution. So wildlife, community things. It actually came back to the UK during, just before COVID. We've got a friend who used to be a lion researcher in Tanzania, whose daughter was big friends with our daughter Lily. And she was back in the UK and bemoaning the fact that there's no teaching about sustainability or environment in school still. I remember our Lily went in a preschool, she had forest walks. I thought that's the coolest subject I'd ever seen. And then in year 1, they went. I said, you should be having triple forest walks, not no forest walks. So we had started this thing here in Cumbria, this Cumbrian Schools Environmental Awards, looking at brilliant schools that had done things there. And that led us into the SDGs, because a lot of the people we met were trying to teach sustainable development in schools. So that led us into that concept, and that's why I think that's become our focus now.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, I would encourage anyone listening to do more reading and research around some of the stuff that you've done. I'll try and find as much as I can to link to it, because there's a lot of inspiration there and a lot of ideas that you can kind of build into your own offering. That for me, it gives you so much. It gives you great marketing messages, it gives you great engagement to enhance your offering, it gives you obviously impact and things to get your team excited about. There's so much stuff there that has a positive impact on your business, as well as just being the right thing to do kind of thing for the world.
I'll just actually talk, because just on that, sort of, turning it back to commerciality, because I realise I'm sort of going off on a bit of a frolic sometimes. But again, looking, it wasn't set up for this, but the Girls Sports Academy has got enormous interest from the netball community, and I'm talking about world netball. I'm talking about serious coaches and players, and world top players, and as on the back of that, what we've suddenly found is popping up is the potential for tours, netball tours in 2027 going forward, that mean that the academy could easily end up being the biggest earner, I think outside of Zanzibar, the biggest earner in the company. All right. And obviously a lot of that we're going to feed into the academy. That's the point. But suddenly when you look at the potential, if you're talking about these tours and coming out and, right, there's 40 girls from posh schools with teachers coming for a week and you work it all out. It's, wow, if we get 6 of those a year, just 6, it's a lot of money. So it's kind of inadvertently, it's even led, I mean, it's not totally inadvertent. You're going to have to do these things. You're not quite sure how they'll pan out, how big they will be. But that reality has hit us that's going to be probably a huge input into our business.
It's something that even if you're a destination that you can think about as well, isn't it? Of if you can create, like you say, if you can create a hub of something specific like that is supporting the community, that can be a reason that shines a light on your destination and attracts people. And whether it's media coverage or whether it's getting more people to come of a different type or of a different specialism, if you think a little bit creatively around that, you can solve an awful lot of problems and create super interesting ways of doing things that benefit everyone involved. So yeah, I think like I say, we could probably talk for 3 podcasts about all the different stuff that you've done that give people ideas. But yeah, just go and have a look at that, everyone, and see what you can find, because yeah, I'm sure if you came away and you thought, how could we apply this, you'd have a lot of good ideas and a lot of commercial impact that could come off the back of it. I've got to move it along a bit, David, to I think you've got a interesting balance of kind of being a DMC and almost like tour operator as well. Like obviously a lot of the business comes from agents bringing work to you, and then you've got some people who are finding out about you direct and kind of running trips that way. Have you got any advice for tour operators, agents who want to work with a DMC or improve how they work with DMCs? Kind of what would you recommend for people to enhance that relationship or what they get out of it?
Well, I mean, I think it's like anything, isn't it? I think proximity is the key. Again, if you look at the way our industry and a lot of industries are going, we lose a bit of that connection between the DMC or the ground, and the tour operator. But I think in a lot of industries, inevitably in 2026 and the way things are done. But I think that connection is still really, really important. Fighting to keep individual connections, I think, is really important, because ultimately it's a very emotional purchase, isn't it? And I think you have to be very careful how you sell something. I mean, look, a simple package holiday, fine. I think it's straight up and down. But the kind of things that we sell, and probably a lot of the companies that you would represent, Tom, would sell, I think they're much more individual and more bespoke kind of offering. And I think it's really key, isn't it, that we maintain it. If we don't have that strong connection, as soon as we get that stronger connection, we sell a lot more. Put it that way. It's like, if that understanding is key. So I think being more involved, supporting each other more, being more face to face, if possible, even if it's via internet, whatever. But particularly spending more time discussing these things, as individuals, is much more important to me than just sending information through and saying, stick that on the site, stick that out there. I think it's key that the people, what I find that's maybe changed in the last 10, 15 years is the people that are selling it generally understand the product less than they used to.
Right.
And that might be fine in a lot of instances, but I think in a bespoke world that we live in, and people are more looking for that, aren't they? Generally speaking, people's disposable income is better, and people are looking for funky holidays. Let's be honest, aren't they? There are a lot of people looking to escape the crowds more. There's still that market is still a growing market for sure, give or take some of the little wobbles around the world, And I think that, so I think for that to work, we do have to have, and we work very hard to try and spend time with our key operators and meet them and be around them and discuss plans with them and throw ideas at them. That's, and I think that's, and I hope they'll appreciate that so when they're marketing, we don't just say, right, here's our product, you market it. We will offer ourselves to be in the middle of the marketing. We'll offer to do stuff, be involved in, and hopefully, and they will then be, have more, spend more time learning about what we're doing, more interest maybe in the good works and things we do, or some of the wildlife projects and things we do, because it allows them to sell a lot better.
Yeah.
So
there was, you were doing an interesting thing pre-COVID, before kind of virtual meetings were so ubiquitous, where you were getting clients and customers on Skype calls with the guides on the ground in Tanzania, weren't you? And I thought that was like an interesting thing of bridging that gap. That maybe wasn't like an operator thing. That was more for the consumers at that point. But there's ways like that, isn't there, that you can connect people with the people delivering the trips to understand that offering better.
I'm assuming there's more of that because we still do that a lot. We still do that a lot, where we certainly will go to the particular person selling, but always offer to them to pull the client in, and that still happens quite a lot. And I actually thought by now lots of people would do that because the way you and I are talking now is the way most people talk. So it's the most obvious thing in the world, isn't it? I mean, I'm on today. I mean, today and tomorrow I've got about 9 meetings that are with people all over the world. And it's just completely normal now, isn't it, to sit and speak to 2 or 3 people in different parts of the world. And think nothing of it. So it's so easy to connect. If you're that third party in the middle, you're not quite sure of something. And I actually really believe this because after that stuff you're talking about, when what we did, which was fun and not quite the same way, but I still think it would be great if we worked hard to make it happen. Where you're literally talking to a guide who's just come from a safari, and you've got a client in there that's going in 3 months' time, and how did you get on today? To what happened in the that kind of thing is so alive, isn't it? It's such a great connection, especially if they're going to go and meet that person when they get there. Really brings it to life. But I think just doing it, just generally, if you've got a client and, most of the time the agent is not fully sure about the product, they might know quite a bit about it, or they might be quite naive on it. But the client, there's going to be loads of misconceptions. And what tends to happen is loads of emails go back and forth, see this crazy number of emails asking silly little points. And how many, so you're wasting loads of time doing that. But how many people do you actually lose because they've got a misconception at the beginning and think, I won't like that because it's going to be like that, isn't it? So what I would say is if there's a ladder with 10 rungs on it to get someone to book, I reckon you go from somewhere 1 or 2 to about 7 or 8, just about every single time you have one of those meetings. So to me, it's the most obvious thing in the world. It could save you a lot of time. It could massively improve your conversion rate to do things like that.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of mentioned earlier about the marketing side and said you've not really done as good a job as you could have done with some of that thing, given what you have to offer. How does it look now with the comparison of business coming to you through agents versus direct? And is there anything in particular you have done that you think has worked well to get you out there?
What I would say, what I think what's hit me is, so again, I'm being honest, we haven't been, we as a company could have been locked up. Look, we're fine. We're doing, maybe we're not driven enough. Maybe this is the fundamental flaw in the way the makeup of someone like me. We're not driven enough to make enough profit, and that might not. But then I think that's a good thing in itself. I think we make enough, and we're doing okay, right? And maybe that's the message in itself. But we have not. I'm talking over 15 years here. We do not market very much, or as much as most of our competition. And in truth, if you want to get, and of course, so in truth, if you want to get to your best potential level of business, I think there's no substitute for hard work. You've just got to cover all bases, and you've got to, within whatever your budget will allow, but you've got to push your budget, haven't you? And be brave, be committed, because you're there, aren't you? You've made this commitment to build this thing, to be in that position, to build this business. But you've got to believe in yourself. You may as well, if you don't believe in yourself enough to fully commit, you may as well turn around and go back now. So the key is not to dither, is it? It's got to be, go wholehearted. And the truth is, very little comes simple, doesn't it? That, you need to cover lots of bases, and it might even happen from the way you wouldn't expect, but somehow by covering so many bases, it will come through. I mean, that sounds obvious, I suppose, but it is. It's hard, like everything. Hard work in the end is the key.
Yeah, when it comes to actually doing it, that's the thing. Yeah, it seems obvious, but yeah, handing the cash over, or putting the
Well, yeah,
graft in or the hours in. That's
yeah,
it's
that's the
harder
key.
than
Yeah,
it sounds.
that is tough because obviously, yeah, everything is finite, isn't it? So obviously that's the challenge is where do you put your money? But certainly you've got to be bold, isn't it? You've got to be brave with it. You've got to commit. Say, so, look, if I commit to my business, if I don't commit, am I saying I don't believe in what I'm doing? If I'm committed to what I'm doing, I believe in what I'm doing, I've got to go with it.
Yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
go
There's
out all
a
guns blazing.
good reframe. It's hard, I think, when you are so driven by like the purpose and the impact and the things that you're doing, that obviously you do weigh like every pound kind of like, oh, where it could go there and it could do this, like what could it do for this conservation program or this community project or something like that. And sometimes that's a bit harder to let go of the reins when you know where else it could go. But if your goal's to go bigger and keep, it was interesting hearing you say about the sports academy earlier, because that's something I feel a little bit more as time's gone on, kind of feeling a bit more brazen about. Oh, we can do this. Like you have little things along the way. It's like, oh, we did this and this worked, and then we tried it went a little bit bigger and this worked, and then you hit a point of confidence to think, hang on, we can do something pretty massive here, and it's actually possible, rather than sort of tiptoeing along the way that you might do earlier on. I don't know if you actually found that, or if that's come
No,
with
like you said,
time or what.
I mean, it comes, experience, isn't it, or different places of your life. I mean, like you said, because where you're talking, where we are, where I am as an individual, obviously, I'm 35 years into this. Over 30 years of Take With the View. So for a lot of people, I mean, that's at the back end, isn't it? So there's it's almost inevitable, I think, that you get a little bit more that way as you move to that end, isn't it? So, but so you think you've got to, you probably, let's say you committing wholeheartedly, we could have done more. I mean, well, we got away with more when, 20 years ago, it was easy to market. We didn't have as much competition, let's be honest. That's the starting point. So probably got away with more because of the state of the market. So I would suggest, the stage we were 25 years ago, if you're at that stage as a business now, you're going to have to work incredibly hard, and you have to commit, you have to believe and commit massively, without question. The philanthropy and the chance of that tends to come a bit later on when you've reached a certain level of success. Otherwise, that allows you to think a bit more that way. That's important as well, isn't it? That your hard work gets you to a place where you can then. I think it's a stage of life and a certain success in the business are probably the key factors that allow you to have the room to make those decisions rather than just struggle. So
Yeah,
but
yeah. Just, I guess, moving to you a bit more specifically, what do you think are the qualities or kind of characteristics that have enabled you to build the business as you have? Like, is there anything that stands out where, or if it's easier to frame it, what other people might say that would be?
Well, I think it's a factor of life in Tanzania, which is this sort of mad roller coaster. I mean, it's we always kind of talk about it like if you imagine a heart monitor and a heart monitor on a European heart just kind of goes ding, 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 and in Tanzania it kind of goes ding, 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 and you kind of go from mega high to miserable low all the time. So coping with that is a big factor. But so a huge part of it, when you're in those dips, enormous amounts of resilience. There's no question. I mean, I could only say in the world that we're in, which is not probably relatively unusual in terms of most of the people we're talking about, but it's, huge amounts of resilience required at some points. And you really do have to just sort of batten down the hatches and then climb out of the bunker, at a certain point. But then obviously enormous emotional highs that then, so you've got that, you're committed because, I say, it's passion. It brings out your passion. And at that stage, you feel incredibly creative and incredibly driven. And so it does go like that. It does, life goes on. But when you see the big things we've done, they're obviously all in the moments when we're going cock a hoop, way, everything's going great. Let's do this, and inspires you to do that. The world we live in, no question, encourages that, and you can feel $1 million with that, but then around the corner. So you do have to definitely have the resolve to take a few whopping blows.
Yeah. You've also, I guess, outside of it, as you would expect with the stuff that you've done, there's clearly stacks of kind of empathy and passion and the kind of things that you mentioned earlier. But you've talked about being a statistics geek as well before, like that is maybe slightly different to what you would associate with that character. Are you into the data? Like how often are you in that?
I mean,
what do you look at?
I don't necessarily, I don't know why or that is, but I mean, I love data. I mean, as a very geeky child, I mean, I was massive in football, but I mean, I can recount ridiculous scores from 1923 football matches, loads of them from, bizarrely from the age of 11, and they're stuck. I think if only you'd used your brain for something more meaningful. But the fact is that, but it's important, of course, isn't it? Because that, I mean, the analysis is easy. I am still a technophobe, which is a danger. So I have to stay out of the way of all that side of it. Peter kind of keeps me out of the way of all those things. But clearly, it's so much easier now to gather your data. But obviously, data is so key. You've just got to monitor so carefully, and I think most people are on that. But in the world we live in, people are not. Of course, there's a lot of people have difficult educations, as the system is poor in Tanzania. So you have to work very hard to get the guys to collect data, but I love monitoring data. I'm always the first to drive everyone crazy. Before I came on with you, I was driving everyone potty with data, and we were talking about one of the camps, and they're going, "Oh, here he goes again."
Yeah. What are you looking at? Is there anything in particular you'd be like, "Oh, that's the thing you're always dialed into," or again, like a travel company, a tour operator, that you would say, "Oh, these are the things that are super, super important"?
Not specifically. I think by trying to cover as many bases as possible, it's because it's when you look at the data, things pop up, isn't it? So so much of what we do in the end is driven by we're covering everything, and you're just trying to preempt where you are and where you should be or where you'd like to be, and so realistically, it's just it's gathering data from all sides. There's not a specific thing that I would say we do. I'll just try to monitor everything as close as we can. I just try to keep as close a handle on everything. As much as anything, is because it's, again, I feel that it's so alien to our own team because, like I said, they come from such a flawed educational system. I'm always trying to sort of get the team to think like that. But again, I think it's you can be caught from any angle, and we do get giant swings. When they think you look, the last, I'll tell you straight now, the last since America, since I'll say Trump, since Trump launched his assault on Iran, that has business stopped. I'm sure lots of people will say that. So you're trying to think, where are we? What's effects that going to happen? If we suffer for that long, where were we last year at that point? How will it look? So all that data just helps us to project, okay, the hit will be this. And of course we get loads of them. Because we get, if there's Ebola in Ghana, with the equivalent of something in Algeria, for the UK, if there's some Ebola in Ghana, people don't go to Tanzania. Because Africa is unfortunately one homogenous thing. Doesn't matter how many thousand miles away they are, and the fact there's no single airline connection or anything else, it's seen as one entity. So we suffer from anything that gets out there in the public realm. We get a hit. So every season you get a hit. So I think that might be one of the other reasons as well. You're trying to say, right, that hit, how long might that last? Where are we now? What's the effect? And you're constantly trying to make sure you're all right. And so that could be a consequence of this constant need to be watching out for the next slam.
Trend of something. Yeah. What's Is there anything else that's been like a big challenge along the way? You meant, talked about Trump, COVID obviously is a one for everyone. Is there anything else that's popped up along
We,
that 30-year
um,
journey that's been a proper
well,
sideswipe?
perhaps an interesting thing in this is the obvious things of climate change. I mean, I don't know, because when you're in those more, let's say, infrastructurally very marginal areas, obviously the whole beauty of these parks and them being so remote is the remoteness. I mean, the last thing you want is a big tarmac road in, because then there'll be 48,000 cars wherever you are. So people love the isolation, but obviously when it rains, it's edgy. And there is no question, in recent years, we are getting, so of course what we get is bigger storms, isn't it? It's like everything. We're just getting, warmer air, bigger storms, more rainfalls. And we used to get plenty of rain as it was, the rainy season or any rains could, you've always had a situation in countries like Tanzania where you'd be driving back from a game drive and you can see a black cloud in the distance. And suddenly it's still dry. It hasn't even rained. And you suddenly get to a certain point in the road and there's now a 30-foot wide river across the road. And I think, oh, well, that's us. So then you have to sit for 2 hours till it goes down and then move on.
Yeah, right.
What happens now is, this year in the Serengeti, just the last few weeks, been incredible. Had cars swept away. No client loss of life, but any loss of life is obviously shocking. But some drivers desperate to get to an airstrip to meet clients for whatever reason, or get back somewhere in time to pick up clients up, have taken risks to cross rivers, and several cars have been swept away and killed the people in the car. And this is unprecedented. That's unprecedented. The level of rain we keep getting keeps moving to new levels. We keep finding ourselves caught out in ways we never thought we used to because of the amount of rainfall. So yeah, I think that is increasingly a big challenge, and it's very hard to predict, of course, because people, what season do you do? So, well, I'll go in the dry season, please. But once the dry season, it might, of course, the way it falls is you might even end up in the wet season that it stays dry. But
Yeah, right.
any time of year now, we can have really serious rain that can be debilitating, and that remains. That's the sort of consistently, you've got big things happening, of course, but that is there every year now for us to worry about one place or the other, or all places. Suddenly we can't move and we've got clients around. We literally can't get to the airstrip to pick them up.
Yeah. We are hurtling towards the finish, and I have a couple of questions to ask before we're done. One that I ask to everyone is, what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about starting a business in travel or tourism in some shape or form?
Well, I think, from make sure, look, do you really, want to do it? And I would say we're in the kind of industry where you do, but, focus on something that you really love, isn't it? Because it has to be. I believe more of us should think like that. I don't know if sort of without getting too philosophical about it. I think if more of us do the things that we love, then we get a wider definition of what profit is, and so on. It's just, I think, philosophically, I just think the way we have to go in life. So I would just always encourage that whatever it is you're doing, if you're passionate about the places you're going to and the thing you do, then it obviously makes an enormous difference, even to your chances of success, doesn't it? Because it basically means you will get knocks. Nobody's going to have a smooth ride, and you're going to be much more resilient to those knocks if you are choosing that path. So again, it seems an obvious thing, but making sure you're choosing something that you have an additional passion for, I think, is key, because it will really help you get through those knocks.
And I kind of want to know your thoughts on the future of the business, but I guess I've got to tie this in a little bit, because you said something earlier about coming into it and being like, oh, we're going to change the world. And then I've heard you talk about legacy as well in different quarters. What do you want the business to do over the next 10 years or, however long the timeline is. And I guess hand in hand with that, what do you want the legacy of it and you to be?
I want the continuation. I want the whole Kalanga clan are moving into it already. Masudi's kids are already, because he's got them well into their 30s, and they're, virtually the entire lot are in one way or another. So that's a continuation. I'd love Lily our Lily to keep involved in it, and grow passionate about it and about the world she comes from. She's adopted from Tanzania. She's I wanted to appreciate the life she's got and want to help in her own community as well. But as a business, it to grow and to continue. It doesn't necessarily have to. I don't want to grow massively. I just want to continue, be ethical, and still do what he does. Personally, and on the side that I want us to drive some change into Tanzania, some ambition into Tanzania. I see the opportunity for us. I see our sustainability champions, genuinely. I see them in 3 or 4 years' time at UN World Conferences as youth leaders, little kids coming from poverty-stricken families in Zanzibar, being the most articulate on sustainability. And that would be so powerful. And it's going to happen. They are unbelievable already. So in 3 years' time, we will parade them to the UN. And that, of course, is no kid in Zanzibar believes that they can be that. They just don't get given any chances. So they suddenly see that the thing I am most passionate about, and you can probably tell already, is that you can see if we can create a little treadmill of 10, 15 kids every 3 or 4 years from that coming through, they will change so many attitudes. And the same with the netball, exactly the same thing with the girls' sport. Suddenly we can win things, we can do things. And of course, some girls will just have a better life, but the ones that make it will be icons and heroines, and they're just not there at the moment. So that is, personally speaking, that I have become just about obsessed with that side of things. But as a business, I just want it to. I want the family line. I want it to its own legacy. I want it to continue, and I want them, to be a great little ethical business that just keeps going and inspires others. That's as much as I can hope for.
Yeah, and what a wonderful thing that would be.
Yeah,
as good a reason as any. Anything else you would like to share before we close it up, David?
I think I've ranted long enough, haven't I?
You've shared lots of wonderful things. Yeah, no, it's, as I said at the start, for me, ever since we met and have kind of, whenever we meet up and have conversations along the way, I always leave it with loads, both kind of inspiration type things, but also ideas and kind of practical things that I feel like I can take away and be like, oh yeah, we can do something with that. And I hope that people who are listening are leaving this with that kind of feeling as well. I'm sure that they are. So thank you. Where can we find you? You've already said you're a technophobe, so it's not like you're flying around on social media. Is it just tentwithaview.com? Is there anywhere else that you would direct people to?
Yeah, the best thing is to get hold of everybody else in Tent with a View, and then they come and track me down.
Up on the Bush Rover somewhere hidden away.
Team of people that they come and say, "Oh, come out of your little hutch, come and go and speak to it." No, I have little phases. What I tend to do is have phases where I kind of make myself available for patches, and then I disappear, and then I make myself available again. So
sounds like a good way to be. Yeah. Thanks, David.
No, great.
Appreciate you coming on.
As always, brilliant. Loved it.
Take care.
Yeah,
speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
There we go. That was me and David Guthrie. I hope you left that conversation feeling suitably inspired about what we can do in travel, what travel businesses can do, the impact that we can make with the industry. Because, knowing what David's put together and how he's built that from innovative thinking in terms of the offering and how they've structured what they do to the impact side of things with the business, both from a conservation perspective and the kind of social side as to what he's doing with with the youth in Tanzania, I think is all pretty extraordinary. So hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to access the resources and other info from that episode, go to north9.agency/podcast. That's north9.agency/podcast. And you'll find that and all the other episodes that we've done there as well. If you're a business in travel or hospitality looking for marketing support, drop us a line and we'd love to find out a bit more about you and see if we can help you in some way. And you can also read more about our 100% initiative on the website too, where we share the story behind how we give all the profit we make from our work with clients to educational charities to try and have a positive impact with the work we do together. A few more left from season 3 coming. Stay tuned for those last couple of episodes. Go back and listen to some of the others from season 3 if you haven't already, and the back catalogue. Give us a like on the socials, say hello, give us some suggestions for guests if you know brilliant people in travel, and otherwise we'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, keep exploring, happy travels.